Good afternoon and welcome to today's meeting. It is 2:10 p.m. and I'd like to officially open today's meeting and acknowledge traditional owners and pay respects to elders past and present on the land of which today's meeting is being held. We have one apology for today's meeting, Councillor Glenn Criddle, and we have 4 members of today's panel. To my furthest left, we have Councillor Bronwyn Ward. To my immediate left, we have Specialist Member Peter Lee. To my right, we have Deputy Presiding Member Ian Birch, and my name is Francesca Levanti, Presiding Member. We have no members on leave of absence. Minutes for this meeting, as well as other meetings, are available on the website. At this juncture, members, I will need to make an announcement. That announcement is that we cannot continue to proceed at this present stage onto item of due consideration. For members that have just been advised that some additional material been presented, or the material has been presented to adapt today that is not part of the agenda or is not included in the agenda. The applicant's material was presented to the city some time ago. However, the DAP members have only received it today, literally just as they've attended the meeting, and therefore are not going to be able to duly deal with the item of due consideration until such time as they have had sufficient time to consider the material. The material has been provided to members on the table as a hard format. It's 17 pages long and you will have to duly consider it. At this juncture, I am going to call for a seconder to adjourn the meeting for up to 30 minutes so that members can duly consider it and we can continue with the meeting. The only other option available is to defer the meeting, and given the extent of material that's here, then I think we will be able to appropriately read through it and have duly considered it in order to recommence the meeting in half an hour. Is there a seconder to adjourn the meeting? It is seconded Peter Lee. All those in favour? It is carried unanimously. For the minute taker, it is 2:12 p.m. and we are adjourning the meeting just to deal with this additional material, and then we will recommence and continue with the meeting. Thank you. Thank you. We're all back. It is now 2:54 p.m. and I would like to recommence the meeting. Members have had an opportunity to go through all of the material. We are now moving back to the agenda and we will commence where we went prior to our adjournment. We are now dealing with due consideration. Members, have you had sufficient time to digest the late material and are able to now vote on due consideration? All those who have duly considered the matters before them in relation to the item. That is unanimous for the minute taker, and that included the material that we were in an adjournment for to digest. Members, are there any disclosures of interest in today's item? That is nil for the minute taker. We have 3 presentations before moving to officers from the city, all relating to the same item. Obviously, the only item we have. We have them in order. Andrew,
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Vladam, I'm not going to say it correctly.
It's
What's your surname?
Boyko.
Vladam, Boyko, and Peter Marcher. We've got them listed here in order. You can change the order if you wish. You have 3 minutes to present, and I'll hand over to you all. Once you've completed your presentations, we'll have questions from the panel. We'll go to city yourselves.
Sorry, before you start, just a reminder if you can speak up, just because this room's a bit echoey, so it's just that side, it's quite quiet.
Sure.
Thank you.
I want to just introduce the project very quickly and the speakers today. So we have Andrew, who's the owner and our client, Jim, our project architect, and myself, the applicant, the town planner. Thank you very much for the adjournment, and I'm pleased that the late information was able to be reviewed in time for the meeting. I do believe that it forms an important part of the story with respect to the application, and it provides a balanced view, I think, of the assessment. So thank you very much. Andrew will just discuss matters from the owner's perspective. Dean will talk to the design and the narrative of the building, and I'll conclude by discussing the proposal, 10 reasons for refusal, and just summarising why we believe this application should be approved and not refused. Andrew, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, as Peter mentioned, my name is Andrew. As you guys have heard the intro, I'm one of the project managers in charge of this particular project here. And so I just want to give you guys a quick perspective from ourselves that's going through this whole process as a developer. Got 3 quick points. The first one was bringing back to context about September 2019, we underwent and got approval for a 10-story apartment development for this particular site. After much, I guess, concerns from the neighbours, we went through SAT and eventually got approval through that. The main concern from that point was the size and scale of a 10-story apartment within an existing 2-story landscape. Once we got that, we took quite a bit of time to go through some marketing, and eventually that had to occur during the COVID-19 period when we did hit our pre-sale targets. Unfortunately, the construction market just made it commercially unfeasible for us to proceed. Construction costs ballooned up from 20 million up to 40 million, and that required us to pivot. And at this point, we thought perhaps going to a townhouse development would be a good way to complement what is going to be potentially developed in the area, which is potentially other apartment developments as well. So we thought that a form of townhouses would be something that would be quite suitable for the area. So we engaged Vadim from ProAct to who has already gotten approval for 2 townhouse developments previously in the same area, to draft out some plans for us to talk to the city. We did that around July 2023. And when we first met them, it was very positive, and they advised us that we should just go through the standard processes of getting the DRP's approval and then subsequently get the support from the city through that way. So we spent a lot of time talking to both the DRP and the city, and we managed to basically get the full support from DRP. And the reason why was that they gave a lot of potential advice that we could consider, and then ultimately reach a compromise to achieve that outcome. However, when we were discussing a bit with the city, sometimes it's a little bit hard to reach a compromise, and most of the time was the more points that was given, and when we try to complete or resolve some of those concerns. There was more points that was then brought up to our attention. So thirdly, we were talking about some feedback. So when we did our 10 story, we had 1 support and 14 negative responses because of what we're proposing in the area, compared to 1 support and really 6 neutral comments that we see from the local community. So I think as the panel probably could see, this proposal is probably much more favored than the 10-story development. And at the same time, I guess it speaks to the testament of the hard work from our design team to be able to achieve this sort of outcome. So just in summary, we try our best to definitely include all the feedback from all stakeholders. And I believe it's a bit frustrating and disappointing that despite over a year's process of discussing with the city and the DRP and everything, we still receive a negative, unfavorable recommendation. And so we hope that moving forward, we'll be able to present the rest of the team to be able to help you guys all to consider some of the further information and help us to be able to construct some much needed housing in the metro area as well.
Thank you. Would you like to present?
Yes, please. So we have to get that slideshow on. So I've just got a very simple 9-page presentation today. Just wanted to summarise the simplicity of the project and what we try to actually find a balance here between the neighbours, between bulk and form and scale. I'll just run through that.
We have got it.
Good.
Yeah.
Is it the one without the front page cover? Straight away, there's the red box on the front page.
From that one.
Yes, but it's
Yes.
a different version.
And the version that we've got does have a front cover on it, and it's got looks like that.
Yeah, that's the second page of it,
Of the final version.
of the older version. I can run through that worst case scenario. But,
That's the one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
it's
that is the one.
Yeah.
that one's it?
Yeah,
Yep,
that was
fantastic. Thank you so much.
Feel free to read that one.
Okay. So just this first slide, I just wanted to run through. Now, on the left, this is a slide from my first DRP presentation. On the left is a maximum potential prescribed build form, and obviously how we decided to approach the site. So 4 small blocks within a very large allowable envelope. This is actually a plan that was submitted as part of the DA. I noticed it wasn't on the agenda item, but what you see in green is the Cambridge Activity Centre plan allowable envelope. What you see in yellow is actually our 4 forms on the site. So you can see by breaking it down, we've created 4 smaller forms on these 2 large amalgamated lots. We've created basically a break on the north-south and an east-west as well to provide some view corridors through the site as well. Very quick example of how one of those blocks east-west looks. You can see the break as well on the crucifix in the driveway. So again, instead of having a very large envelope, we've actually created 4 smaller blocks on the same side. Looking north and south, you can see we've been fully compliant to our northern neighbours and our southern neighbours in terms of our setbacks, not just for the current, but also for a future neighbouring build as well. And equally to our neighbours on the west side, which is 2-storey dwellings. You can see from the street on the right-hand side, we've reduced our bulk from 4 stories to 3 stories to 2 stories to 1 story. And again, try to just complement what's happening around us on all 4 sides. That's just an image as well of how the bulk form starts to reduce back to our western neighbour from 3 to 2 to 1. Importantly, instead of creating landscape that's central that we can only have access of as amenity, we actually try to create all of our landscape to the surrounding perimeter edge, and just wanted to soften what we're doing compared to our existing neighbours and our future potential neighbours. So you can see the snaking aspect of a footpath going around every single resident's front yard and creating a deep soil zone and tree canopy along the boundary, not just a polygon fence. This is just a simple example I've also showed in the first ERP. So again, because we have such a wide, deep east-west side, we actually broke this down along that axis, not just because we've got a sewer running straight through the guts of the site, but by doing that, it actually allowed us to create a gap and allow northern light to filter into the southern facing units as well. Oh, I think that's the last slide. There was one more render, but it was just of the side elevation of the roof. So I just wanted to quickly summarize the ethos of the design plan here. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Over to Peter yourself for the last presentation.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Andrew. Good afternoon, panel members. Peter Merger from Mr. Town Planning, the applicant and also the planning consultant for the proposal. Last month, on about the 8th of October, as we approached the conclusion of the process, the DIM, Andrew and I met with the Director of Planning to discuss the application, see if we could resolve the remaining issues before the city finalises its report and send that for publication. At that meeting, we were advised that there were 5 remaining issues, which were dwelling mix, civil departments, sustainability, building separation, and solar access, sort of south-facing units. We resolved several of those issues, 2 in particular, by providing updated plans, demonstrating compliance with civil level departments and sustainability. We asked the city to refer to the previous justification addressing the dwelling mix, building separation, and solar access, as well as to refer to comments from the design review panel, which supports the design with respect to its layout and its solar access. About 5 weeks after our meeting, when the RAR was released, we were surprised to see that the 5 remaining issues became 10 reasons for refusal, along with several sub-reasons for refusal. Earlier today, it was brought to my attention that the agenda omits 2 of our planning reports, which were submitted at lodgement and to support the amended plans, which I'm glad that the panel has now been able to review. I'll highlight the meeting with the Director in the absence of our planning reports because it provides you with insights in what we've experienced as a project team over the past year dealing with this application. Years worth of work, which has included 40 design review panel reviews, multiple reviews of plans, updates to consult reports and meetings. After all of that time and effort, the city has determined that the application should be refused. Not only should it be refused, but it should be thoroughly rejected. 10 reasons listed as reasons for refusal. That in itself is disappointing. So I prepared a response to the reasons for refusal, which should panel members yesterday. The report addresses each reason individually, explaining why that reason is not valid and should be rejected. The DIM's presentation was able to touch on some of the specific issues, demonstrating how, for instance, building separation as presented in the RAR as an issue, and how it actually compares to the building envelope that's permitted in the apartment guidelines that are completely different. The reality is that the development is comprised of 4 blocks with significant separation both internally and to the adjoining properties, yet it's still a reason for refusal. If we were to run through the other issues listed as reasons for refusal, a similar view of the assessment would be evident. But I won't run through those. You've got my planning report, but I will talk to some of the positive aspects of this development. The design review panel. 4 times this application was presented to the design review panel. And if you don't know the City of South Perth, the City of Melbourne design panel is comprised of some of Perth's most respected architects. We worked with them, made several revisions and improvements to the plan. They commended our approach. You can see the comments that they made in the minutes and the response that we made in relation to the comments. In the end, we received 10 green, a score of 10 greens from the design panel, which is really satisfaction, I think, for all the hard work that we put into the proposal. In terms of the context, I believe we satisfy the objectives of the Canning Bridge Activity Centre plan. The proposal demonstrates that it can provide increased density in the area without causing conflict between existing, as well as the planned future vision of the area. The existing housing, the prevalent existing housing in the area is group dwellings. The impact on adjoining properties is minimal. Landscaping helps to soften the interface between our development and adjoining properties. Streetscape interaction is achieved, with the ability for these houses to be adaptable, not only allowing for people to work from home, but also being adaptable and able to provide opportunities for people age in place, for people with disabilities and people with disabilities. It suits a broad demographic, and we believe that these, when constructed, will be very popular within the community. The lifestyle choice is there, and it suits families and professionals and young couples and people who might have maybe living with or looking after people with disabilities or who are older. Multiple areas are provided for outdoor pursuit. There is on the balcony, on the ground floor. There's been a real sort of careful approach in terms of how this is designed and what is presented. And we feel like this is a very good product that respects the area and the community. And it could be said that the community agrees. Over 600 letters were mailed during the consultation process. About 8 responses were provided, with half of these providing actually generally positive comments. So we're pleased with that. So in closing, I repeat that there are no good reasons to refuse this development. Elements such as building setback separation, dwelling mixed landscape elements, I believe have been inflated in the report. It's created view that development is not appropriate, and in fact the opposite is true. Development has the support of the city's design review panel, and their independent expert opinion should be recognised, not dismissed in the report. Development has been held to the highest standards of design review and planning assessment, adapting, improving, and eventually achieving support of the DRP. And at a time of we have a housing availability crisis, good development should be rewarded and supported. This development provides standard housing that is high in quality, that meets the needs of a broad demographic, caters to people with disabilities and who may seek to age in place, and which has the support of the community. The DAP should support good design, recognise the hard work that's gone into the application process, and hopefully improve this application. We are happy to take on any questions. There's a lot of reasons for abuse. So if there's any specific questions in relation to those, we're more than happy to discuss those. But we hope to receive your support today. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Panel members, do you have any questions to the first 3 presenters? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose when you started looking at group values, you probably get to volume 1 of the codes and Supreme assessed against, well, that's the structure, the activity centres plan and the volume 2. How did that go with your communications with the council?
Yeah, that was tricky. We not only that, but the framework in place is actually quite complicated. I think the activity centre plan is probably a document that needs to be reviewed. There's it's probably at the time may have been sort of a document that was in at its time, but I think now there's probably provisions there that have to be looked at. With respect to the changes to the R codes as well and how that talks to the actual activity centre plan, there's an obvious problem there. Group dwellings are not a preferred use in the area, but they are contemplated use, so they can be considered. Whether they're an unlisted use, I question that, and that's actually explained in our planning report that we submitted at the lodgement. We felt that it's not an unlisted use. It's, it may not be preferred use, but by making it a listed use, you make all development around there as unlisted use, which is the case. We struggled with respect to how we I guess assess this essentially. And what we did was that we worked through, we understood the architect still had some relevance, despite the activity centre plan referring to volume 2, and it's been volume 1 assessment or PUC, I think we call it now. What we did was we referenced the provisions we thought that were relevant. So the ones in the community centre plan and the ARCOs that were not relevant, that spoke to multiple dwellings, that we simply couldn't assess the application with. They referred to towers and things like that, providing laneways within the development. They were just impossible to address in the planning assessment. But we did refer to setbacks and landscaping and things like that had some input. What the activity centre plan does is that in the absence of there's a lot of weight placed on the design review panel. It actually talks about the role of the design review panel within that plan, and that's why it's actually got sort of Perth's panel of real experts in terms of design review. You probably can get a better panel together in Perth. So that's they deal with a lot of bigger stuff in the city of Belfast side of things, increasing. So their comments have greater weight, I believe. So in the absence of some provisions that may be lacking for group development assessment, we've got the DRP there to I guess help shape the design and development. So we met with them twice prior to lodgement. We addressed everything that we thought was relevant in our planning report, but each and every time we just felt it was we were asked for further information. There were obstructions put in place. We're asked instead to go on in the second planning report, address every single provision in the Articles Volume 2 where it didn't apply, and it was difficult. And then we found out that was then, I guess, used against us in the overall sort of determination of the application. So I guess with the focus on trying to sort of address the city's concerns irrespective, we really wanted to try and whatever concern was presented, we try to deal with it. We saw at the end of that sort of process probably failed. It was disappointing after a year's worth of work. Both of them, and it doesn't probably reflect well on us or the cities, but it's good that we've got then an independent review by this design review panel, which I think, in light of, I guess, if you refer to the planning reports that we've submitted, when you look at everything in context, I think we've got an application that is that should be supported. That may not be a preferred use, that is apartments in the area, but this area is yet to. We've seen this plan's been in place for a while, and yet apartments are not taken off. And I think there may be a struggle to actually get development that is seen in the centre plan because of the fragmented nature of the area, and the fact that maybe this should just be a group dwelling site. So we're a mix in between that. We've acknowledged that apartments under 10 stories can be constructed. We've gone for a 4-story product. The taking that down will impact the adjoining properties. We feel it's 40 dwellings is suitable. The local community will take this product, but we've also tried to respect that in the design and in the way that I guess it deals with the neighbours' property. So overall, there's a lot in terms of the packaging this. We've worked on it a lot. There's a lot there in terms of the layers, the planning framework to apply. Not all of this is perfect, but we just feel that the reasons for refusal are a bit unfair and unreasonable, and we hope that we've done enough here in your support.
Thank you. And just the 12 units, or 14 units you have, they're quite large. They're all quite large. Again, how did you come to that? It seems as though there's, as Peter spoken to, what the planners might have had in mind at the time the activities in the plan was developed, and the reality of things now a little bit different. So just in relation to the mix of unit size, if you like, a comment on it's more from the marketing point of view than the planning point of view.
I think our consideration was knowing that it was supposed to be a 10-story site. We didn't want to just downscale it just to a 2-story development. That will probably be maybe harder for the city to justify to the community, especially since it goes maybe even more against the activity centre plan. The other thing was, before we even really went through this whole application process, as I mentioned in my earlier presentation, we did basically drew up a quite detailed initial plan that was brought to them, and we did explain there's a sewer main running down the center, and therefore this is how we're going to split it. This is how we envision it, and this is how we think that the four townhouses at the front can work towards being some offices on the ground floor, and then the bedrooms and living on the top, while the ones at the back can just serve as sort of more for residential use. We spoke to real estate agents as well regarding some of these proposals, and they thought that would be quite a good one. And not to mention there were, I guess, some of Valium's previous work in the area that also shows that there is some appetite for townhouses or similar product in the area as well.
And if I might just add to that from a planning perspective, I know dwelling mix was listed as the reason for refusal. Ultimately, the only thing that this product doesn't provide is one bedroom option. There's the ability. I think in terms of the mix it provides, I think it's actually quite broad in terms of satisfying sort of the apartments, aging in place as well, being able to provide families and all the way down to sort of young couples. And there's an entry point there as well for the rear for the dwellings at the rear. But group dwellings, and this is where the conflict arises in terms of group dwellings that you provide one bedroom dwelling options. It's an apartment provision. They should be included, in apartment development, because there should be a mix and an option to start, with maybe some of the apartments that are on the lower levels. But I mean, ultimately, to turn this into a one bedroom dwelling offering, you'd be a one-story group dwelling development. It's just not. It doesn't make sense. And this highlights the conflict that we've got for it to be used as a reason for refusal. We've said that to the city that we'd have one of these units, two of the units, typologies would be either 2 stories in one bedroom or 1 story in one bedroom. It doesn't make any sense. So you would actually be sort of under development of the site. So it's unfortunate that I guess, I mean, we don't tick the box with respect to that provision, but just the following actually the competing provisions and the land uses, and how it's assessed. There needs to be some common sense applied to how you assess this. And so whilst we don't specifically provide one bedroom option, apply with that provision, the dwelling mix is fantastic in terms of being able to have the 4 stories down to 2 stories, aging in place, disability access, working from home, caters for families, all these sorts of things. So, and more importantly, I think it's really suited to the area.
I have a question, probably to all of you, more likely yourself. In the concluding remarks in the RA, it talks about the design does not provide, in particular, the language used here, does not provide an appropriate standard of internal amenity for residents or preserve the amenity of the surrounding lots. You've already started speaking a little bit about that. Can you elaborate further on those 2 points, particularly in the context of the internal amenity? You had started talking about it, and you've also spoken a little bit about the amenity of the surrounding lots. Could you provide a few more comments in relation to those matters? Those are concerns that have been raised in the concluding remarks in the RA.
I think I can't. It might be a good idea to also ask the officer to elaborate on how we derive that opinion, but in terms of
how your report does meets those elements, that how you say is how you would describe the internal amenity and how you describe the development's compatibility with the amenity and protection of the amenity of the surrounding lots. I probably should have phrased it like that.
Yeah, I'll start off with the external amenity because I think we do a really good job there in terms of how we sort of interact with the neighbours' properties. At the moment, the site is clear, it's vacant. The landscaping will sort of form a sort of a ring route of development, which there is a pathway which sort of snakes and provides access into the apartment, into the units to the rear. This was commended by the DRP, and we actually we suggested snaking that pathway around. So there's a degree of separation there between these units and adjoining properties, which sort of helps to create this interaction able to be provided with pathways, but then also a degree of separation and privacy that the landscape can also provide. So I think the external amenity is good in that visual privacy is compliant and maintained. Interaction is there, and there's surveillance of those areas, but also there's a high degree of landscaping and sort of space in the external areas of the site. So we think that we do well there with respect to the external, I guess, interface and also the rear, where we've got introduced a 1 metre setback to the ground floor units. We actually toyed with a 3-story proposal at the rear, so but felt that we wanted to respect the owners at the rear. We stepped that down to 2 stories, and initially the plans actually had a lock boundary wall on the ground floor. We took that off the boundary, included some landscaping, and have completed sort of the ring around the site and landscaping. Despite the fact that some of our neighbouring properties are actually the ones to the rear of us that got garages and carports are really sort of and 2-story brick walls that sort of go quite close to our boundary. So despite the fact that they turn their back to us, we still have tried to manage that interface with them by things like setbacks and landscaping. In terms of internally, that is a bit more challenging. We've got a layout, a development layout, as we do, where you've got a significant barrier there with the easement that runs through the centre of the site. It's not just an average easement; it's quite a significant easement. We pretty much dictated how this design would eventuate. We've got our garages are all internal, so it's not a fantastic internal area, but we do still manage it by providing landscaping and trellises and things like that to try and, I guess, provide allow sort of light to enter into the area and some greenery, some form of greenery. At the very end of the central driveway, there's also tree planting and sort of there's a view corridor down with at least some landscaping that's provided. There are, I guess, we've also managed, I guess, overlooking any visual impacts internally, and really try to sort of, I guess, maximise the opportunities for developments to face outwards. We did consider actually whether we flip the south-facing units and turn those internally and how that would look, but we thought that created more problems in terms of how those units interact, and thought that it would be better to offer a unit that sort of faces its neighbours properly, that has access to the pathway down the back, and there's multiple outdoor areas. You'd actually be quite funny when we flip it the other way. So I think it's a much better outcome. It's typical, I guess, of development of this nature. Is there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, look, you're right. We've taken all the garages off the street, so we've really tried to work on that streetscape. Most importantly, pedestrian access is not conflicting with our vehicle access through this project. We have no overlooking to any of our surrounding neighbours, and the way we've designed our setbacks, our windows, or our balconies, or our protection of screening. And internally, we've actually changed the layouts of unit type B and unit type C. So basically, our living areas aren't looking into each other, and our bedroom areas, although our bedroom window is actually offset from each other, so no one's actually looking directly into each other's windows. And again, just the setbacks to the outside edges, no looking to the outside edges, and just a pedestrian streetscape.
Just one more thing. I mean, these developments are often seen as that internal driveway. You can look at it. Perhaps it's not hard to say there. It can be seen as a necessary sort of requirement, but not exactly fantastic. But bikes, so think of a footy play some cricket in there. I mean, it's actually sort of it is a space that can be used in a different way. It's not necessarily a place that you're going to have vehicles dominated by vehicles. There's an opportunity there.
We made both sites. We're creating one driveway, not two driveways side by side.
So we actually we had perspectives. We showed a bit of that. He's playing sport in there and all told to take it away. But yeah, there is not. I mean, there's an opportunity to use that space. It's not just a fit area or it's not lacking into what I think is a role for that in the development. That is just sort of for a driveway.
Thank you.
Gee, sorry, can I just follow up on one? I was curious about the walkways along the boundaries. I mean, the alternative is to provide bigger open space areas for those apartments, which is probably more common. What was the thinking behind it? Is that correct from the DRP or?
This is a consistent term in the DRP and also SPP 7.0 about safety and security, about separating pedestrian infrastructure and vehicle infrastructure. What you normally find on a maisonette style development is effectively the driveway is the pedestrian entry to get into townhouse 2, townhouse 3, townhouse 4. So by having these outside edge snaking aspects, we could create garden space, but we also could create a procession element with open style fencing for a bit of neighbourly engagement, rather than purely relying on the only form of community engagement as the driveway to say hello to your neighbours.
I think most people probably just walk. I mean, 12 vehicles at peak hour, and like Emerger says, there's the opportunity for kids to play in the street there, and they probably will, and hopefully no one will ever get killed. So yeah, I was just curious about that, because the value of that compared to the value.
It was a theme that we discussed in the DRP one as being the lesser of those.
Thank you. Any further questions from panel members? Thank you. If there's no further questions, we'll move to city officers. City officers, if you'd like to make some comments either about the RA or anything that you've heard today, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. The City of South Perth recommends refusal for the development application for 14 group dwellings. While group dwellings are classified as a use not listed for the site, the City does not oppose this development typology in principle, having regard to the site's context. The concerns lie with the development's design, which offers poor internal amenity, presents building mass to external lot boundaries, and does not adequately respond to the Canning Bridge Activity Centre plan. The applicant in their presentation refers to the City's design review panel, which the City would like to address. The design review panel is an advisory body only, providing advice on the design of the development against State Planning Policy 7, design of the built environment. The DRP does not consider a development against the requirements of the planning framework. Although the development has received support from the DRP, it does not meet several key requirements of this planning framework. In particular, the orientation of the dwellings creates privacy concerns, relying on full height screening and diminishing overall livability of the site, particularly for units located to the south of the development. Furthermore, the landscaping provided falls well below the minimum required, undermining the area's established and desired future green character. The proposed setbacks are insufficient, resulting in poor building separation, limited opportunities for landscaping, and inadequate solar access for residents. The proposed waste management and servicing plan is also inadequate, with waste collection requiring vehicles to reverse into the site from the road, compromising both safety and access, and failing to contain these activities within the development as required by the Activity Centre plan. In addition to these concerns, the development would result in poor internal amenity for future residents, with poorly designed outdoor spaces and limited access to natural light. The design does not reflect the desired future character of the Canning Bridge Activity Centre plan precinct and does not integrate well with the existing urban environment. The proposed bulk and scale of the buildings are not compatible with the surrounding properties, further contributing to the City's concerns about the long-term suitability of this development. It should also be noted that no approval has been granted for the scale of the development notationally indicated in the architect's presentation. Therefore, notwithstanding the DRP's endorsement, the City recommends the application be refused based upon the cumulative impacts of the matters highlighted. In response to the applicant's commentary, the City's decision to recommend refusal is not based on unwillingness to support development, but rather on the failure of this proposal to adequately address the framework's requirements. We understand that the applicants make efforts to refine the design, but significant non-compliance remains, particularly in relation to the Canning Bridge Activity Centre plan and the associated requirements. In conclusion, while the City appreciates the applicant's efforts and engagement with the City's design review panel, the development does not sufficiently align with the objectives of the Canning Bridge Activity Centre plan, the residential design codes, and the prevailing planning framework to warrant an approval. In relation to the additional information provided to the DAP earlier today, the City has received this information previously. However, notes that has been superseded in relation to the current proposal being considered by the panel. This is why the city has not included these as attachments for the panel today. Thank you.
Thank you. Panel members, do you have questions to city officers? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, just in relation to the material we had today, Mr. Manager said there were 5 reasons that they believe the material we have says that they have been covered. Have you considered that and does it have any effect on your recommendation? Are no longer relevant.
Is that our meeting with the director? That's right.
Yeah.
Yep, Scott was present.
Yeah. So yes, we have considered those matters, and the city position remains the same from that meeting.
So the recommendation doesn't change in relation.
Correct.
Thank you. You have another topic.
Yeah, go for it. Questions, go for it.
I guess a bit like that. To me, to the words a little bit like a square peg in a round hole. I'm a bit troubled by the assessment of the group dwelling against model dwelling codes. And it does seem to, I mean, for example, 75% landscaping requirement for group dwellings, you'd never get a group dwelling development to achieve that, I wouldn't imagine, because it takes into consideration roof spaces and presumably balconies and maybe common central courtyards and something like that. That's just an example. But I just wondered if you've got a comment there, and is that a consistent approach the city applies in these circumstances?
Yes. As you pointed out, and as explained by the applicant, Volume 1 of the design codes is not applicable for development within Canning Bridge Activity Centre Plan. So it does default to the actual requirements of the Canning Bridge plan itself, which mandates in terms of building height controls and your side and rear setbacks. And these other controls are explicitly outlined within the Canning Bridge Activity Centre Plan. Where relevant, the plan calls in elements of the Residential Design Codes Volume 2. So for example, the requirement for 75% landscaping, yes, the city has considered this and does consider that very onerous for a group dwelling typology, and is prepared to exercise discretion when it comes to these sort of developments. The nature of the proposal being a use not listed within this precinct as well alludes to the requirement to exercise some discretion in considering this application. So just to be very clear, the city doesn't have an issue with the group dwelling typology, but the design of the proposal put forward and how it responds to the framework.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. Mine are about the planning framework itself. I note that the Canning Bridge Activity Centre is a policy document, a due regard document, or activity centre plan is a due regard document. And I note that your scheme that refers to it, particularly your use class table has under the scheme policy a reference to a clause 18.6 in your scheme. And 18.6 talks about uses where the zoning table doesn't identify any permissible uses, then essentially the local government may consider pretty much any use. So I'm interested about your comment in terms of a not listed use. Your use class table does list group dwellings. The centre zone refers to 18.6 and then it refers to due regard to plans of a structure plan or local development plan. Can you provide some additional comment about your comment of it not being an unlisted use in that context?
Yeah, certainly. So yes, the scheme does refer to the land use permissibility for the centre zone to the activity centre plan itself. So while there's no X uses per se for the site, we have what the activity centre plan refers to as preferred land uses. And where a land use is not listed as a preferred land use in the relevant quarter or precinct, it's deemed to be a use not listed. In the case of this development, particularly in the city's consideration of the proposal, the city did seek a request from the Planning Commission to vary the requirements for consultation, to deem it just a 14-day consultation without the onerous period, and sought review of the use not listed interpretation, to which the advice the city received was to treat the application as a use not listed and advertise as a complex proposal in this case.
My other questions relate to the design elements, and I'm interested in having some further conversation, particularly in relation to the streetscape interaction. So I'm looking at the grounds for refusal and the significant concerns that you're raising about this development in its location and form and scale of it. Those are predicated on information that we have here about the surrounding form and scale of development, which has a substantial number of sites developed for a grouping of them, effectively group dwellings, and they are separated out by tenure into a building, a substantial building form that is unlikely to change in the immediate or in the not too distant future. So I'm interested in hearing some more about the concerns that you have around the development not satisfying the Canning Bridge Activity Centre plan, particularly in the context of the local development in the area and development forms that are unlikely to change in the near future given the formal provisions. Can you provide some comments about the significant concerns that you have as set out in the report?
If I may ask just a clarification question, is your question relating to the external impact of the development, or does it include the internal amenity of the development as well?
My primary question was external, but you can talk about the internal. My question was about external.
Thank you. So yes, the city has reviewed the context of the site to start off with, and one of the reasons the city believes a group dwelling typology generally is supportable in this location is a site context response, noting that there is significant fragmentation of land surrounding the site. It is unlikely, short of large parcels of land being purchased and amalgamated, that development contemplated in the scale of the Canning Bridge Activity Centre plan would be developed to that full intensity that the plan proposes. In terms of the city's concerns regarding the external impact of the development to the adjoining sites, the framework calls for essentially, as the applicants alluded to earlier, a ring of green essentially around the development, where you essentially end up with a centralised development itself sitting within a landscaped and green context. The development fundamentally proposes to push that built form towards the external lot boundaries in lieu of consolidating a built form more central to the site. This leads to a requirement for visual privacy screening on outdoor living spaces and internally between the two building forms and how they interface with each other, offsetting windows and screening windows, limiting solar access, especially to the south. In terms of the impact to adjoining properties, we're predominantly concerned in terms of the lack of articulation of the building's mass as it goes along. I note that the city's assessment of the proposal has applied the less onerous setback requirements of podium in lieu of considering a tower element. So we have tried to be a little bit lenient with that.
Thank you. Any further questions from panel members? Yes.
What you just explained, this building is like a podium. So you could build this building and then put a building set in a little bit further up to 10 stories. So I just, the commentary about the side treatments to the building seems to actually be compliant with the podium section of the design. I didn't understand what you were saying.
This is the building, is essentially a podium.
So to respond to that, the city has assessed the development against the podium requirements in terms of setbacks itself. Is that your question in lieu of assessing it against the tower form?
No, you've said that, then you've criticised. In fact, if you were to maximise development on it, you'd have a development, the lower levels would be something like this, and then the main building would be set in.
That is correct, yes. But the setbacks of the building form, if it was assessed against the podium, still do not achieve the setbacks that we'd expect for a podium in this case.
So just following on from that one, the Canning Bridge provisions obviously have a framework, have a set of numbers in them, essentially in relation to the building form and scale. That framework also talks in its document itself, as well as your scheme about discretion and the extent of discretion. Was there any consideration, or what was your consideration in relation to things like setback? I note that some of the key issues were around non-compliance with the Canning Bridge policy, but I didn't get a sense that the variations from those elements were significantly compromising in relation to either achieving the outcomes of the centre plan or impacting on the development. And I note that your assessment, there was concern that it was a variation from that. Have you got any further comments that you want to make in relation to any variations? So, and what I'm really trying to get at is typically we see variations from a particular standard, and that assessment in a number of cases, when considered against the context, may support a discretion. Your assessment appears to indicate that those setback provisions are particularly rigid in the framework. Is that my read of it correct, or is it incorrect in your view?
So you're really correct. There is discretion in this case as part of the city's assessment where something didn't achieve ordinarily what we probably refer to as an acceptable outcome in volume 2. We have assessed them against the objectives. In relation to for example, setbacks, looking at a rear setback of 1 metre in lieu of what is contemplated as 4 under the framework. The city doesn't believe the development achieves the objectives in terms of siting the development within a green context, providing adequate setbacks to adjoining properties to preserve residential enabling amenity. And the setbacks themselves as well force the development to rely upon full height screening to achieve visual privacy as well. So that is also an internal amenity effect of the reduction to the setbacks.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from panel members at this juncture?
Yes. Well, just in relation to that, so with a podium type development, you could have major openings 4 metres from the boundary. Imagine.
Yeah, it depends on the room, but yes, that is something that could be contemplated under the framework.
But it would still be overlooking. Anyway, I guess just I was in reading this and through it all, I was thinking, well, if someone did want to build group dwellings here, I was trying to think how they could get an acceptable development, and it seems like it should be more instead of the central driveway, it should be more centrally focused or something like that. I couldn't quite figure out how group dwellings could be approved on the site. It's a very general question, but
yeah, okay. I suppose in response to the question, it's
talk. They say, well, where do we go? What can we do?
Yeah, unfortunately, with applications like this, we can only assess what's put forward for us. We can't design a proposal for them.
I'm not saying that. This is over a year ago that this was submitted, and there's been a lot of discussion, and presumably there was some guidance provided, which may be being missed along the way or something. I don't know, but I was. They believe they've responded to a lot of things. There seems to be this fundamental problem here in that the way the footprint, or the way the thing has been approached with the central driveway and the goings towards the side and rear boundaries, is that sort of roughly, is that a fundamental problem?
In terms of a centralized, consolidated access is something the city normally definitely champions for in terms of a site response. In terms of what that has in terms of an effective design, that's very hard for us to sort of provide a commentary on. I suppose in terms of this site, the city's probably position would be it's a flat site, it's not constrained in any manner. With the exception of the sewer through the middle. There would be, the city's position is there are alternate design options that could be explored that would better respond to the Canning Bridge Activity Centre plan and provide a higher level of internal amenity for residents and also external amenity for the proposal.
Okay, thank you.
My final question from me anyway is that I note that the centre plan was approved or through South Perth anyway in 2018, WAPC in 2018, and then there's been some modifications culminating in the information I've got in front of me in 2020. I know that since then a number of changes have occurred, including the activity centre plan changes, the guidelines for those activity centre plans, as well as a series of changes through the R codes. As well as we've heard today comments from the applicant in relation to challenges within the construction sector and cost escalations. Has there been any movement in relation to a review of this provision for ongoing suitability in the context of, one, the age of the centre plans in place and the changes of the framework, as well as the changes that we're seeing happening generally in the metropolitan area and probably broader WA in itself, in relation to building form and scale and construction challenges? Is there anything, do you know of is there any strategic review or otherwise of the framework that's in place?
Thank you. Yes, the city will be undergoing a review next year, and towards the middle part of next year we'll commence a review of the plan, because we are aware, as you stated, that there have been a number of changes in both legislation and the market, and we are seeing more inquiries in regards to group dwellings in the area.
Thank you. Those are my questions. Any further questions from panel members?
Could I just ask for clarification that we have an alternative recommendation, and whether the applicants have seen that, and do they have any comments on their position?
We have. We reviewed those conditions, and they appear to be standard. We don't have any issues with the conditions approved.
Any further questions from members? If there are no further questions from members, thank you, officers. We will now move back to the agenda. There is a recommendation at the beginning of the agenda. The recommendation is for refusal. In accordance with the standing orders, we will go to the recommendation in the agenda first. Is there a mover of the RA recommendation for refusal? For the minute taker, there is no mover or seconder. The motion lapses as a result of no mover and seconder. Members, we have an alternate recommendation for approval. You have a copy of it. Is there a mover of the alternate recommendation for approval? It is moved. Is there a seconder for the alternate recommendation? It's seconded. So the mover is councillor Bronwyn Waugh, and the seconder is member Peter Lee. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
Sure. So in reviewing this development in the context of the responsible authority report, there are several key points that I think obviously need to be considered. The proposed setbacks are one of the things that were discussed, and they were highlighted as not supporting the desired future character, as outlined in the Canning Bridge Activity Centre plan. Now, this is obviously a critical component to considering the assessment, and aligns with the broader concern that the development may be inconsistent with residential design codes, specifically regarding setbacks, view corridors, building separation, and visual privacy. Additionally, concerns have been raised about the development's provision of private outdoor spaces, its ability to accommodate diverse households, and its landscaping requirements, as well as the overall character, built form, scale, and amenity in accordance with both the Canning Bridge Activity Centre plan and the estate planning policies. However, in reviewing the design assessment process, there's already been a significant number of design panel reviews, which have all concluded that the design complies with relevant codes and principles. So I find that there's no necessity to reassess the residential design codes in detail, as the design review panel has adequately addressed them. And I'm satisfied that the design principles embedded within the residential design codes have been met, and I accept the findings of the design review panel. Furthermore, I also accept the submissions from the applicant's consultant that suggest that none of the issues raised within the codes are substantial enough to warrant refusal of the development, and each concern is able to be addressed through conditions should it be necessary. So regarding the weight to be given to the responsible authority report recommendation for refusal, I do find that it's not sufficiently persuasive given the compliance demonstrated in the design panel reviews. The key question then becomes how much importance should be assigned to the Canning Bridge Activity Centre plan, the element objectives in clause 2.7 and the state planning policy 7.0 concerning character, built form and scale. Considering these alongside the requirements of Regulation 67 provisions and ensuring that the proposed development meets both the strategic planning frameworks and statutory planning controls, in this case, I am inclined to place greater weight on the design panel's assessment and ability to address their concerns through conditions rather than the responsible authority report recommendation for refusal. So the Canning Bridge Activity Centre plan outlined in the executive summary serves as the foundational document for the future development of the area. It sets objectives, goals and development guidelines to ensure orderly improvements to both infrastructure and land use over time. A key element of the plan is its focus on establishing a vibrant and creative community around the Canning Bridge rail station, with a mixed use approach that offers that includes office, retail, residential, recreational and cultural activities. And this mixed-use character is to be enhanced by pedestrian-friendly spaces and integration with regional transport networks while preserving the local heritage and natural environment. So the proposed development as assessed in relation to the activity centre plan does not appear to conflict with the intended land uses or broader goals of the plan. While the activity centre plan provides broad guidelines for future development of the area, it's not a prescriptive document. It does offer high-level direction rather than strict regulatory controls, meaning the proposed development is consistent with its vision and does not detract from the long-term objectives for the area. The responsible authority report in referencing clause 3.3 of the activity centre plan focuses on the goals of the plan, which serve to communicate the expectations of the centre. These goals act as a benchmark for assessing the success of the activity centre plan over time, ensuring that future developments align with its guiding principles. And while the report raises concerns based on these goals, it is important to remember that they reflect the broad intent of the area rather than specific prohibitions on certain types of development. So the proposed use fits within the overall framework of the activity centre and contributes to its intended character, built form and scale. So in conclusion, while the activity centre plan sets the overarching goals and guiding principles for the area, the proposed development is not inconsistent with these objectives and fits within the high-level guidance provided. So therefore, I think the development should not be seen as detracting from future vision within the activity centre, and any concerns can be appropriately managed within the scope of the plan objectives. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the second like to speak to the item?
I think Councillor Ward has summarised everything really. I just will comment from my specialist area of being architecture that it's a very confident design and it's very polite to the street. And there are a lot of things to support in what I see happening here. I also understand that the builders who will build this sort of project larger buildings, and one of the biggest problems is holding costs hanging onto sites too long. So there's already been a long period happening with that. I do think this is probably a very sensible solution in the construction market.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers on the motion?
Thank you, Chair. I'll also speak in favour of the motion to approve the application. Firstly, I'll say that I understand the quandary of the officers in trying to deal with this. This is a classic case of the best laid plans, which is a transit-oriented development, boosting densities and that, trying to fit it, retrofit it into a long-established area is just fraught with difficulty. The other thing is, yes, I'd like to see more apartments, but we can only plan. It's what the reality of the market might deliver. Is another matter. It doesn't matter how good we think it is. If it doesn't work in the marketplace, then it's not going to happen. But having said, I think, and I agree with the other speakers, I don't think this is going to be detrimental to the overall intention of the plan. I would have perhaps liked to have seen a little bit of a mix, and hopefully not everything that happens will all be 200 square metre plus 3 to 4 bedroom apartments, but certainly that will be an attraction to a lot of people as well. But there'll be other needs as well. I do note that the work through the design review panel has refined the plan, and I think in looking at it as a group dwelling development, it seems to me to be a pretty reasonable development. And yeah, as I say, I do respect the officers' assessment, but I think they're probably given, as I say, a bit of a square peg in a round hole to try and fit, and that's been the problem there. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll speak to the item. I'm supportive of this proposal. I think it's a good development for the area. I have given due regard to the Canning Bridge framework. I note that the framework itself starts off at the very early stages. It provides overview and direction on this site and on other sites in the precinct. It talks about the approval process, and one of the key starting points in the approval process is the design phase. I'm satisfied that the development, as evidenced in the report we have, has met the design phase, and that's indicated through the provisions of the DRP, giving it green to all of the elements within the design. Equally, when we move through the framework itself, it is structured in a similar way as most planning documents have, just structured in a way it's got elements and desired outcomes. When I have a look at this proposal and against the information that's been provided, including the plans, the documents from the applicant as well as the RA, I'm of the opinion that the proposal does meet the desired outcomes. And whilst there might be some discretion in relation to the requirements as written into the policy document, I believe those are warranted in the context of the application we have before us, and they do meet that desired framework, and I'm satisfied that overall the proposal is appropriate in its context. And finally, I would, as I indicated a little bit earlier today, the local context in which it sits has been provided to us in the documentation as well, and it clearly shows that the area is predominantly low rise with a mix of densities achieved through essentially a form of grouped dwelling form. This is consistent with that dwelling form in my view, and does not impact negatively in the character of the area. It also includes a number of developments, and the number is 14, as we all know. That is higher than those other forms in terms of number, and therefore goes towards increasing the density of development within the area. So from my perspective, it achieves the desired outcome, albeit in a slightly different way than the requirements as set out in the policy document indicate. And has already been indicated, there is discretion both in the policy documents and written into the scheme, and from my perspective, this is an appropriate development and can be supported. Those are my comments. I move back to the move for right of reply and close of debate.
Thank you.
Thank you. Debate has been closed. We are now going to the vote. All those in favour? For the minute taken, that is carried unanimously. We will now move back to the agenda. There are no Form 2 applications. There are no Section 31 reconsideration applications. The matters in relation to those set applications are listed. I have no comments on those. Members, are there any general business? There is nil general business for the minute taker. Accordingly, close the meeting at 4:03 p.m. Thank you, everybody, for your participation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.